They thought Earth had come to beg for mercy. Instead, the human diplomats smiled when the war vote passed. The chamber of the Celestial Forum was so large, it made even pride feel small. Layer after layer of alien delegates filled the curved hall, their voices rising like thunder under the silver dome. Some hissed in anger, some clicked their jaws, others spoke through floating translators that shook with cold hatred. At the center of it all, under a single white beam of light, stood Earth's only representative. His name was Adrian Keel. He wore no armor, no medals, no royal robe, just a plain dark suit, pressed clean, with a narrow silver pin on the collar. His face looked calm, almost too calm, while hundreds of alien eyes stayed fixed on him. For 3 straight hours, they had accused humanity of everything. A tall warlord from the Varkesh Dominion slammed his claw against the podium. Humans hide warships. They reject open inspections. They build defenses in secret and refuse lawful oversight. This is not cooperation. This is defiance. A murmur rolled through the chamber. A glass-skinned delegate rang with sharp sound. Their population grows too fast. A floating hive envoy added in one shared voice, unstable species become dangerous species. Adrian said nothing. Outside, he looked patient. Inside, he counted every second. Then the chairman rose high above the delegates in his suspended steel frame. His swollen, pale mind pulsed faintly inside a shell of glass. His name was Chairman Thalen. For 10,000 cycles, Thalen said, the Forum has preserved order among the stars. No world may stand beyond that order. No species may refuse lawful control. He paused, letting the silence grow heavy. The vote begins now. Lights flashed across the chamber. Blue meant war. Red meant peace. Adrian lifted his eyes and watched the colors spread row by row. Blue, blue, blue. The hall slowly turned into a frozen ocean. Only 2 smaller trade worlds voted against the motion. Chairman Thalen faced him again. The decision is final. A state of war now exists between the Celestial Forum and Earth. Humanity is granted 30 standard cycles to surrender all military command and accept occupation. The chamber became very quiet. They wanted to see the human collapse. They wanted fear. They wanted tears. Instead, Adrian touched the edge of his podium, took one slow breath, and smiled. Not a wild smile, not a broken one, a relieved one. Finally, he said. The silence after that felt deeper than space itself. The Varkesh warlord leaned forward. You smile because your species is finished? Adrian met his gaze. No, I smiled because now we can stop pretending. Confusion moved through the chamber like a ripple. He folded his hands neatly. I have one request. 48 standard hours, enough time to withdraw our diplomats and clear civilian routes from conflict zones. Several delegates laughed. You want time to panic, one of them sneered. Adrian's voice stayed soft. Call it whatever helps you sleep. Chairman Thalen studied him for a moment, then lifted one mechanical arm. Granted, 48 hours. After that, our fleets move. Adrian bowed his head once. Thank you. That is all Earth needed. Moments later, far above Earth, Admiral Naomi Rayner watched the chamber feed go dark on the bridge of the battleship Iron Horizon. She stood very still. Then she smiled too. He said it, she whispered. Around her, the bridge crew froze. Naomi turned sharply. Begin Protocol Black Tide. Across the solar system, hidden doors opened in silence. Warships slipped out of buried moon docks. Stealth carriers rose from mining stations, hollowed inside drifting rock. Dark destroyers powered up near the outer gas belts, where no one had ever thought to look. For 17 years, humanity had acted smaller than it was. Now the mask was coming off. In his apartment above Port Meridian, Adrian poured himself a glass of amber liquor. His hand trembled once, but not from fear, from release. On the screen, Naomi appeared. "They took the bait," she said. Adrian looked out at the city lights and answered quietly, "No, they walked into the door we left open. In just 48 hours, the enemy fleet will jump toward Earth, believing it is hunting weak prey. But what if humanity has spent 17 years building the perfect trap?" The screen went dark after Adrian's last words. For a few seconds, he stood still in his apartment above Port Meridian, looking down at the city below. From that height, everything still looked normal. Traffic moved in clean, bright lines. Towers stood silent against the night. Boats crossed the water as if tomorrow would be ordinary. But tomorrow would not be ordinary. In 48 hours, war would arrive. His wrist console vibrated once. Secure channel. Naomi. Adrian answered at once. "They've started moving," Admiral Naomi Rayner said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were bright with focus. Long-range watchers confirmed that the Forum's first attack group is forming near the border lanes. "How many?" Adrian asked. "More than 6,000 ships if the count is clean." He let out a slow breath, still arrogant. "They think size is enough," Naomi said. A small, tired smile touched Adrian's face. "That mistake is about to cost them everything." Naomi lowered her voice. "All hidden fleets are waking up too. Moon dockyards are open. The outer belt stations are armed. The black carriers near Titan are moving into position. No delays, no failures." "Good." She paused for a moment. "Civilian movement has begun too. Shelters are filling fast. No screaming, no panic, just order." That hit him harder than he expected. For years, Earth had prepared in silence. Governments had smiled in public and argued on the news. Businesses had kept moving. Schools had kept teaching. But under that normal life, another life had been built. Deep shelters, emergency food chains, hidden factories. Children taught safety drills without ever being told the full truth. Now the reason for all of it was no longer hidden. "Tell them something for me," Adrian said quietly. Naomi waited. "Tell them we did not prepare all these years to die slowly. We prepared to survive. We prepared to win." Naomi held his gaze. "I'll tell them." The call ended. A few seconds later, low warning tones rolled across Port Meridian. Not wild sirens, controlled ones, the kind meant to guide people, not frighten them. Across the solar system, under the red dust plains of Ares Colony, Commander Lena Tor walked through a long steel tunnel lined with armed crews. Most were young. Some had never even stood under an open sky on Earth, but all of them wore the same hard expression now. A technician ran up to her, breathing fast. "Commander, the freight vaults are unlocked." Lena nodded once. "Open all of them." Huge blast doors split apart under the colony floor. For years, they had looked like storage yards and cargo holds. They were not. Rows of hidden warships sat sleeping in the red light, their dark halls stretching farther than the eye could follow. One young officer stared in disbelief. "We had all this the whole time?" Lena looked at him. "No, we built all this while they laughed at us." Above Earth, the bridge of the Iron Horizon was alive with movement. Green symbols spread across Naomi's tactical screen like new stars being born. Carrier groups, attack wings, missile barges, silent strike cruisers. Every secret piece of the human fleet was stepping into place. An officer swallowed hard. "Admiral, when they see this..." Naomi finished the thought for him. "They won't understand it fast enough." At the same time, far beyond the main trade lanes, on the industrial world of Selvaris, a human field agent locked the front door of his repair shop and pressed his hand against a hidden wall panel. The false wall slid open.
weapons, maps, codes, black devices. The agent's name was Damon Cross. For 7 years, he had played the role of a harmless mechanic. Tonight, that lie ended. He picked up a small pulse unit and whispered, "You should have stayed away from Earth." Back in Port Meridian, Adrian grabbed his case and headed for the door. He knew he would not return to this apartment again for a long time. At the threshold, he stopped and looked back once more at the sleeping city. Then he left for the underground command center buried deep beneath the mountains. And high above the world, beyond sight, the first enemy ships had already begun turning toward the jump line. Adrian is heading underground, Naomi is setting the trap, and more than 6,000 enemy warships are on the move. But the Forum still has no idea that the first real strike will hit before their fleet even reaches Earth.
The mountain gates sealed shut behind Adrian with a deep metal sound. It felt like the world above had just closed. Inside, the underground command center was already fully awake. Large screens covered the walls. Officers moved quickly from one station to another. Tactical maps shifted every second in blue, green, and red light. Voices stayed low. Nobody wasted words. Nobody needed to ask what was happening. War had already begun. Not with explosions, with movement, with timing, with silence. Adrian walked down the central platform toward the main command table, where Dr. Marcus Vale was waiting for him. Marcus had gone gray years ago, but his eyes were still sharp. "You made it before the window closed," Marcus said. "Give me the status." Marcus touched the table and a three-dimensional map rose into the air. Near-Earth space turned slowly in cold blue light. "The Forum's first attack group is aligning for long-range jump," Marcus said. "Estimated arrival, 5 hours, 19 minutes. Adrian studied the map. "And ours?" A second layer appeared. Human ships. So many hidden positions lit up at once that even Adrian felt his breath catch for a second. For years, they had disguised them as freight escorts, survey craft, mining platforms, supply carriers, repair stations. Tonight, the lie finally ended. Marcus kept speaking. "Naomi has placed the outer screen near the inbound corridor. Ares Colony has released reserve wings. The shadow carriers are moving behind the enemy's expected line of approach." Adrian nodded once. "Good." Another signal flashed. Silvaris. Damon Cross appeared on the side screen, half his face lost in darkness. "The package is planted. Military relay hub, lower network spine. I can shut their district systems down when you say the word." "Not yet," Adrian said. "Wait until their fleet commits." Damon gave a thin smile. "The waiting is the hardest part." "That's how I know you're still alive," Adrian replied. The smile faded. Damon leaned closer to the screen. "For 7 years, I fixed their machines while they joked about how easy Earth would be to control. I'm ready, Adrian." "I know." The channel closed. Far above Earth, Admiral Naomi Rayner stood with both hands behind her back on the bridge of the iron horizon. The stars beyond the front glass looked cold and sharp. "Enemy scouts?" she asked. "None close enough to change anything," a sensor officer answered. "They still believe our visible defense line is all we have." Naomi gave a small nod. "Perfect." Commander Elias Ward turned from his station. "Final count confirmed. 2,100 combat ships ready. 400 more can join if needed." Some of the younger officers stared at the number as if it still felt unreal. Naomi did not. She had helped build this hidden fleet piece by piece, year after year. "Open a fleet-wide channel," she said. Faces appeared from bridges, cockpits, and war rooms across human space. Men and women, Earthborn, Marsborn, Stationborn. Some looked afraid, some looked calm. All of them looked ready. Naomi spoke clearly. "They are coming because they think we are weak. They are coming because they think fear will break us before their weapons do. They are wrong." Nobody moved. Every hidden ship, every silent year, every lie we swallowed, every drill our people endured, it all leads here. Her voice turned colder. "We do not fight because we hunger for war. We fight because they left us no peace worth trusting. Hold your lines, trust your timing, and when they arrive," she paused, "show them what Earth has been building in the dark." At that exact moment, the first warning tone hit the bridge. The enemy jump wave had started. The Forum fleet is only minutes away from Earth. Naomi has just addressed the hidden human armada, and the next time space opens, the galaxy will see humanity's real strength for the first time.
Space tore open above Earth. One second, the stars looked calm. The next, long burning cracks ripped across the darkness as the first enemy ships forced their way out of jump space. Huge war vessels appeared one after another, glowing with heat from the jump. Cruisers, carriers, battle platforms, heavy command ships. The Forum's first attack group arrived like a storm that believed nothing could stop it. On the bridge of the Iron Horizon, nobody spoke for one short moment. Even trained officers felt the weight of what they were seeing. More than 6,000 enemy ships, a wall of metal, a moving empire. Then Naomi's voice cut through the silence. "Hold every position." That was enough. Everyone moved again. Red symbols poured across the tactical screens so quickly that they looked like blood spreading through water. The enemy fleet had come in exactly as predicted. Tight center, armored front, command ships protected deep in the rear, carriers held back to launch later. Old doctrine, strong doctrine, proud doctrine. Commander Elias Ward studied the movement and gave a quiet, humorless laugh. "I really think we'll meet them head-on." Naomi kept her eyes on the screen. That's because nobody ever taught them fear. Far across the battlefield, inside the enemy flagship Sovereign Talon, High Admiral Korvax Reel stood under a wide combat dome and watched Earth grow larger on the main display. He was broad, cold-eyed, and wrapped in dark-plated armor. Confidence sat on him like iron. "Any change in human deployment?" he asked. His sensor chief answered at once. "No major change, Admiral. Only a thin outer defense line, limited capital presence, exactly as intelligence promised." Korvax smiled. "Good. Break the orbital line quickly. Once their first shield falls, the planet will bend." Orders moved through the enemy fleet. Weapons charged, missile bays opened, strike craft prepared for launch. And then, without warning, half the stars around them moved. Not stars, ships, human ships. Dark shapes woke all across the edges of the battlefield. Hidden destroyers powered up from silent positions. Stealth carriers lit from behind drifting debris. Missile platforms rose from cold shadow. Warships the Forum had never counted suddenly filled the black with green and white combat lights. On Korvax's bridge, alarms exploded. "New contacts! How many?" The answer came back cracked with shock. "Too many to confirm." Naomi raised one hand. "Now!" Across the human fleet, the first strike launched. Thousands of missiles roared forward in bright lines. Rail rounds flashed like silver spears. Long-range beam fire cut hard across the void. But the attack did not hit the strongest center. It hit the nerves. Sensor ships, command relays, escort lines, targeting hubs. Humanity did not swing at the giant's face. Humanity cut its balance. Enemy screens burst white with impacts. One carrier lost power and rolled sideways. A command cruiser split along its spine. Several escort ships vanished in fire before they could even send clean reports. On the Iron Horizon, voices rose around Naomi. "Enemy flank disruption confirmed. Sensor net collapsing. Formation drift detected." Naomi did not even blink. Phase 2. Break the rear line. Fast attack wings surged forward at once, slipping through fresh gaps before the enemy could seal them. Small human fighters dived between larger ships, striking engines, launch bays, and weapon joints, never staying still long enough to be trapped. For the first time in years, the Forum fleet stopped looking unstoppable. and began to look confused. Deep under the mountain, Adrian watched the battle open across the tactical map. His jaw tightened. Then he touched the console. Send Damon the signal. The enemy fleet has taken the first blow. Their formation is already slipping, and Adrian has just activated Damon. But the real shock waiting for the Forum is far worse than hidden ships.
The signal reached Silvaris in less than a second. In the hidden room behind his repair shop, Damon Cross looked down at the code flashing across his wrist display. That was it. No more waiting, no more pretending. He pressed his thumb against the black pulse unit. For one heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, the Forum's military district on Silvaris went dark. Communication towers died. Targeting relays failed. Encrypted routing channels collapsed one after another. Across the first attack group above Earth, officers suddenly lost clean contact with support systems that had been feeding them updates from outside sectors. Formations that had looked strong only moments earlier now began to drift apart like broken ice on black water. On the bridge of the Sovereign Talon, High Admiral Korvax Reel slammed his fist against the rail. "Restore the network!" His communications chief looked pale. "We are trying, Admiral. This is not local failure. It is spreading through every linked relay." Korvax turned back toward the main tactical screen. What he saw next was worse. The human fleet was changing shape. They were no longer fighting like a wall. They were hunting. On the iron horizon, Naomi Rayner watched the enemy fleet lose rhythm. This was the opening she had wanted. "All frontline groups," she ordered, "switch to ghost pattern. Release shield breakers." Across the battlefield, hatches opened along the underbellies of sleek human cruisers. Small, dark objects slid forward in waves. They were not standard missiles. They were not drones. They were something stranger. Korvax narrowed his eyes. "What are those?" No one answered fast enough. The first shield breakers reached the enemy line. A second later, human heavy guns fired. Forum shields flashed bright blue, and the rounds passed through them. For one terrible second, the enemy crews did not understand what they were seeing. Then, armor split open, hulls burst inward, entire sections of major warships tore apart as if their shields had never existed. Korvax's face lost its color. "That is impossible." On Naomi's bridge, Commander Elias Ward gave one tight smile. Not impossible, just hidden. Years of secret research had led to this moment. Human engineers had not built stronger shots, they had built smarter ones. For a tiny fraction of a second, the rounds shifted phase and slipped through shield layers before striking solid metal underneath. Now, the first attack group began to burn. One command cruiser exploded from the center. A carrier lost its launch depth and spilled fighters into open space. 3 heavy ships tried to pull back together, only to crash into one another as broken guidance data twisted their movement. Naomi did not let the movement breathe. "Drive into the gap," she said. "Do not let them rebuild." Human attack wings surged forward. Strike craft cut through drifting debris, hit engines, then vanished before return fire could lock. Larger ships swept into the enemy rear and tore into support vessels. Every move had been studied, every turn had been practiced. Deep in the mountain command center, Adrian watched red enemy markers start blinking out one by one across the tactical display. Marcus Vale looked at the numbers with disbelief. "Their center is breaking faster than expected." "Because they never believed we could truly hurt them," Adrian said. Then another line opened. Ares Colony. Commander Lena Tor appeared on the screen, red dust still on one shoulder of her uniform. "Reserve wings are in position. Give the word and we close the escape lane." Adrian looked at the shrinking paths around the enemy formation. This was the moment. If they moved now, Korvax's fleet would not just lose, it would be trapped. Adrian placed his hand on the table. "Send them in."
The Forum fleet is wounded, blind, and starting to fall apart. And now Adrian has ordered Lena to seal the escape route. But Korvax still has one brutal move left that could turn the battlefield into pure chaos.
High Admiral Korvax Reel looked at the closing trap around his fleet and made the kind of choice only desperate men make. "Signal all heavy divisions," he snapped. "No retreat, no scatter, full forward burn." For a second, even his own officers looked stunned. "Admiral," the weapons chief said carefully, "our rear lanes are closing. If we push now, we go straight into the human center." Korvax turned, his eyes burning. "Exactly. Their strength is speed. Their strength is timing. Break their rhythm. Crush through with mass. If we cannot leave cleanly, then we drown them in fire." The order raced through the first attack group. Surviving Forum battleships surged ahead at once, engines burning white-hot. Damaged cruisers were shoved aside. Smaller escorts were sacrificed to clear a path. The enemy formation, broken only moments earlier, became something uglier and far more dangerous, a wounded beast charging blind. On the bridge of the Iron Horizon, warning tones pulsed fast. "They're not falling back," Commander Elias Ward said. "They're coming straight through the middle." Naomi Rayner's eyes narrowed. "Good. That means they've stopped thinking." A younger tactical officer looked up. "Admiral, if they break through the center, this becomes close-range combat." Naomi answered without hesitation. "Then we make close range hurt." She opened a fleet-wide channel. "All ships, brace for impact distance. Break into hunter pairs. Hit engines, hit command towers, hit weapon joints. Do not trade broadside fire unless you have no choice. Cut them apart from the inside." Across the human fleet, captains answered instantly. Pairs of ships peeled away and crossed paths, forming deadly attack lines. Fighter wings dropped low under enemy gun arcs. Missile frigates fired and rolled clear. Electronic warfare ships flooded the battle space with false targets, ghost signals, and broken coordinates. Then the two fleets crashed together. Space became chaos. Not neat lines, not clean formations. Chaos. A human destroyer skimmed under a massive Forum warship and fired straight into its engine core. The huge vessel burst open in blue-white fire. Nearby, a human cruiser lost half its shield face under heavy beam fire, spun violently, then kept fighting with one side burning. On the Sovereign Talon, Korvax grabbed the rail as shock waves rolled through the deck. "Report! Forward screen lost. Port division breaking. Human fighters inside the inner line." His jaw locked. "Then kill them." But killing them was not simple. Human pilots flew like people who knew there was no road behind them. They struck hard, vanished through debris, then returned from impossible angles. They did not fight like the older Forum enemies. They fought like every old human mistake had become a lesson paid in blood. Deep beneath the mountains, Adrian stood over the tactical table as the casualty numbers rose on both sides. Every friendly loss hit him like a weight in his chest, but he did not look away. Marcus Vale stood beside him. This was always going to hurt. Adrian gave one slow nod. "I know." Then another secure signal cut in. Selvaris. Damon Cross appeared again, breathing harder now. Red warning light flashed behind him. "I've reached Phase 2, he said. "Their military power grid is open. If I trigger now, half their long-range support goes blind." Adrian looked at the shrinking time window around Earth. Then he looked at the red enemy mass still driving forward. "Do it." Damon gave a grim smile. "Gladly." Seconds later, across the Forum network, support systems crashed again. Fresh targeting updates died. Reserve pathing collapsed. Long-range correction data vanished. And on the battlefield, Korvax finally understood the truth. This was not a war Earth had been dragged into. This was a war Earth had prepared to finish.
Korvax's desperate charge has turned the battle into a brutal knife fight at point-blank range, and now that Daemon has cut off the fleet's support, Naomi is about to unleash the move that could break the first attack group for good.
Naomi Rayner waited 3 more seconds, not because she was unsure, because timing was everything. Across the battlefield, every human captain watched the same silent countdown on their screens. Enemy support links were gone, their formations were broken, their heaviest ships were too close together, too angry and too committed to the charge. Perfect. Naomi lowered her hand. Release gravity spears. At once, a line of human support ships opened armored bays along their sides. Long black cylinders drifted into the void, silent and almost harmless-looking for one brief moment. Then they activated. Space itself twisted. Invisible pressure crashed into the battlefield from several angles at once. Around the charging Forum fleet, false gravity wells bloomed alive. Massive enemy warships were dragged off course, as if the darkness itself had grabbed them. Some pitched sideways, others lurched downward through space, like they were falling into a hole no eye could see. Engines screamed against forces they had never been built to resist. On the Sovereign Talon, officers were thrown against their stations. "What is happening?" one shouted. Korvax's science chief stared at the readings with horror. "Artificial gravity spikes, Admiral. They're bending our approach lanes." Before anyone could recover, one heavy cruiser slammed into the side of a nearby battleship. Armor split open, fire burst through both hulls. A carrier lost control and spun across its own fighter wing, turning friendly craft into sparks and wreckage. Korvax's face hardened with fury. "Stabilize the line!" But there was no line anymore, only fragments. On the iron horizon, Naomi watched the enemy center twist itself into knots. "All strike groups," she said, her voice cold and steady. "Fire on drift-locked targets. Collapse the center." Human warships answered like one giant machine. Phase cannons fired first, punching through crippled shields. Missile swarms followed, diving into fresh wounds. Rail rounds cut through exposed engines, bridge towers, and weapon spines. Human fighters came in after the barrage, striking anything still trying to move. The first attack group did not fall in one single moment. It broke in layers. First the escorts, then the carriers, then the proud battleships that had believed size alone made them untouchable. Deep below the mountains, Adrian Keel watched enemy markers vanish from the tactical table, one after another. His face stayed still, but Marcus Vale saw the pain in his eyes. Not joy, not victory, only the heavy look of a man watching a disaster he had spent years trying to prevent. "We gave them every chance," Marcus said quietly. Adrian did not answer for a moment. Then he said, "I know." A fresh alert appeared on the table. Escape pods, thousands of them. Human targeting systems were requesting orders. Before Adrian could speak, Naomi's voice reached every human ship. "Negative fire on escape pods. Do not target survivors. Let them leave. Let them remember." That order changed the feeling of the battle at once. This was not slaughter. This was a warning. On the Sovereign Talon, Korvax saw human guns turn away from helpless pods and felt something colder than fear settle inside him. Respect. And that frightened him even more. Cruel enemies were easy to understand. Disciplined ones were not. Then his tactical officer looked up, pale and shaking. "Admiral, we've lost more than 80% of the fleet." Korvax stared at the burning field around him. For the first time in his life, he understood that this war had already become something larger than numbers. The Forum had come to teach Earth obedience. Instead, the galaxy was about to learn what happened when humanity stopped pretending to be weak. The first attack group is breaking apart, escape pods are flooding the battlefield, and Korvax has finally seen the truth. But Naomi's next choice will decide whether this becomes only a victory or the first legend of the war. Naomi Rayner did not order the final kill. She ordered the message. "Open a direct channel to the enemy flagship," she said. All around her, the bridge of the Iron Horizon still trembled from distant impacts. Burning ships drifted across every screen. Escape pods scattered through the wreckage like sparks thrown from a furnace. Human pilots were calling in damage reports, rescue requests, and status checks. The battle was almost over, but it still felt alive, like a wounded beast refusing to die. Commander Elias Ward turned toward her. "To Korvax?" Naomi nodded. "Now." A second later, High Admiral Korvax Reel appeared on the main display. His armor was blackened. One side of his face was cut and streaked with blood. Behind him, the bridge of the Sovereign Talon looked half-broken, sparks falling from dead panels, officers moving through smoke, warning lights flashing over twisted metal. He no longer looked like a conqueror. He looked like a man who had seen the future and hated it. Naomi stood tall. "Admiral Reel, listen carefully. You have lost this field." Korvax's jaw tightened. "Then finish it." Naomi's eyes did not move. "No." That answer hit harder than any weapon. She stepped closer to the screen. "You came here to break Earth. Instead, you found what your masters refused to believe, that humanity prepared for this war from the first day we understood what your kind really wanted. We watched, we waited, we traded, we smiled, and while you measured our words, we built this." Korvax said nothing. Naomi continued, her voice steady and cold. "I am giving you a choice. Gather whoever can still jump and leave. Take your wounded, take your fear, go back to your forum and tell them exactly what happened here." Korvax stared at her with bitter disbelief. "Why would you spare us?" Naomi answered without hesitation. "Because dead enemies teach nothing. Survivors carry truth." Silence filled both bridges. Then Korvax gave a slow, heavy nod. It looked like it hurt him more than the battle had. The channel closed. Across the battlefield, the shattered remains of the first attack group began to retreat, not in one clean line, but in broken pieces. Damaged cruisers limped away, struck carriers vanished into emergency jump windows. Scattered warships fled in whatever direction their remaining systems allowed. Human ships did not chase. They watched. They recorded. They let fear travel home. Deep under the mountains, Adrian Keel stood beside a bank of communications officers when one of them turned sharply toward him. "We have access. Damon's sabotage opened a path through their outer network. We can hit civilian channels across multiple forum systems." Adrian looked at the main screen in front of him. This was the second battlefield, the one built from words. "Do it," he said. A moment later, his face appeared across thousands of worlds, in homes, in markets, in transport terminals, in quiet rooms where ordinary beings had only ever heard one version of history, the forum's version. Adrian began without raising his voice. "People of the Celestial Forum, your rulers told you humanity was dangerous because we would not kneel. Today they sent a fleet to force our obedience. That fleet has fallen." He let the words settle. "We did not attack your homes. We did not fire on your escape pods. We defended our world. Remember that when they ask for more ships, more soldiers, and more lives." Then files began appearing beside him on the broadcast. Secret occupation plans, resource seizure agreements, war directives, proof. Not rumor, not accusation, proof. Across forum space, millions watched in stunned silence. The lie was starting to crack. And once a lie cracks, fear begins to leak through it. The defeated fleet is running home with the truth. Adrian has just exposed the forum's hidden plans to its own people,
and doubt is spreading across the stars. But humiliation may drive the Empire to become even more dangerous next.
The first protests began before Adrian's message finished spreading. On Rethys Prime, cargo workers walked out of the loading towers and filled the streets below the transit ring. On Valora, students climbed onto public screens and painted the same sentence over government banners again and again. If humans are monsters, why did they spare the survivors? Across the Celestial Forum, fear changed shape. It was no longer fear of Earth, it was fear of the truth. Inside the High Chamber, the mood had turned vicious. Delegates were no longer speaking with cold confidence. They were shouting over one another in open panic. Some demanded tighter media control. Some wanted mass arrests. Some called for every copy of Adrian's broadcast to be erased from public systems. Chairman Thalen floated above them in his steel frame, his pale mind pulsing with anger. "Silence!" he thundered. The chamber obeyed, but only for a moment. A crystal envoy spoke first. "Our citizens are asking questions we cannot control." A Hive delegate added, "Military trust is weakening. 3 outer sectors have delayed mobilization." Then the Varkesh representative rose, his scales bright with fury. "Then we stop acting frightened. Humanity humiliated us because we sent too little. We answer with full force. First Corps Fleet, Second Corps Fleet, inner reserves, every loyal ship." Several delegates shifted uneasily. One of them finally asked the question none of them wanted to say. "And if that fails?" The chamber went still. The Varkesh envoy did not blink. "Then we burn Earth." Far away, deep beneath the mountains, Adrian stood over a fresh tactical map as the intercepted words replayed in a quiet command room. Around him, officers worked with total focus. No one looked surprised, only more tired. Marcus Vale folded his arms. There it is. No mask left now. Adrian kept his eyes on the map. "How long?" Marcus answered without hesitation. "Days, maybe less. They're gathering every fleet they still trust." Another officer turned from her console. "We're also seeing movement in neutral systems. Merchant routes are freezing. Some smaller worlds are denying forum docking access." Adrian gave a slow nod. "The Empire is cracking." Marcus looked at him. "That makes it more dangerous, not less." Above Earth, on the bridge of the Iron Horizon, Naomi Rayner stood in silence as rescue crews pulled injured pilots from drifting craft. The battle was over, but its cost was still arriving, one name at a time. Commander Elias Ward stepped beside her. "Preliminary loss count is in." Naomi did not look away from the stars. "Say it." "We lost 31 ships, heavy damage on 74 more. Civilian shelters remain secure. Ares Reserve held. Enemy losses?" He exhaled slowly. "Severe." Naomi closed her eyes for 1 second. 31 ships, 31 crews, 31 groups of families who would soon hear a knock at the door. When she opened her eyes again, the softness was gone. "Then we use the time we bought," she said. Elias frowned slightly. "For repairs?" Naomi shook her head. "For the next strike." At that same moment, on Salvaris, Damon Cross crouched inside a narrow service corridor when emergency lights flashed red above him. His sabotage had worked too well. Security teams were already sweeping the military district. A voice whispered through his earpiece. "Damon, extraction path is closing." He smiled in the dark, though sweat ran down his neck. "Then I'd better stop thinking about extraction." He pulled a second device from inside his coat, smaller, sharper, not built to blind a system, built to steal its heart. "The Forum is gathering every fleet it has left. Naomi is already preparing the next move, and Damon is about to risk everything for one final theft that could decide the war before the next battle even begins." Damon Cross moved before the next patrol reached the corridor. He slipped through a side hatch and pulled himself into a narrow maintenance shaft, barely wide enough for his shoulders. Metal scraped against his jacket as he climbed downward through heat, dust, and the steady hum of overloaded power lines. Below him, the military district of Selvaris was falling into controlled panic. Orders were being shouted. Backup systems were failing. Officers who had spent years feeling untouchable were now afraid. Damon did not enjoy that fear, but he understood it. For 7 long years, he had smiled at men who spoke about Earth like it was a weak animal waiting to be trained. He had fixed their machinery, shared drinks with them, listened while they joked about human stubbornness and human pride. All those silent years had led to this. His earpiece clicked. A voice came through in a whisper from Lunar Relay. "Damon, status." "I'm under the Central Archive," he whispered back. "Security is tightening. You may have 8 minutes." Damon gave a soft breath that almost sounded like a laugh. "Then I won't waste 9. He dropped from the shaft into a dark storage room and moved toward a sealed blast door marked with military access codes. This was the real target, not the power grid, not the relays, the war archive. Jump routes, reserve fleets, emergency fallback plans, supply lanes, deep command protocols, everything the Forum would need for its next strike. Damon pulled the small theft unit from his coat and pressed it against the lock panel. Green light, then gold, then the door slid open. Inside, the archive chamber glowed in cold blue lines. Tall memory columns stood in rows like frozen soldiers. Damon moved fast and connected the device to the main relay spine. Data began to pour into the unit. Fleet maps, hidden depots, command chains, encrypted fallback routes. His pulse started hitting harder with every passing second. Then the alarms changed. Not far away anymore. Close, very close. "They're here," the relay voice warned. "Multiple security teams." "How long on transfer?" Damon asked. 40 seconds. Damon turned and looked at the far exit. Too open, too far. No real cover, no good choices. He drew his sidearm, not because he wanted a fight, but because there was nothing quiet left. Bootsteps hit the outer hall. 20 seconds. The first breaching charge slammed into the archive door. The metal bent inward. Damon crouched behind a memory column and kept his eyes on the transfer bar. 30%, 50, 70. The second charge blew the door open. Smoke rolled into the chamber. Voices shouted. He fired twice, not to kill, but to slow them down and steal one more breath. Return fire scorched the column above his head and rained sparks across his shoulders. "Damon," the relay voice snapped, "you have to move." 90? He shouted back. 93. He waited. One more second. Then the theft unit flashed full. Damon ripped it free, slammed a pulse charge into the main archive spine, and ran through the smoke just as the chamber behind him burst into white fire. The blast did not destroy the whole building. It destroyed the data they still had. In the middle of alarms, smoke, and panic, Damon disappeared into the district with the stolen future of the war in his pocket. Far away, in the mountain command center, Adrian saw the transfer arrive. Marcus Vale stared at the files in silence for one full second. My God. Adrian looked at the expanding map now spreading across the main screen. For the first time since the war began, he could see the shape of what came next. Not just defense, not just survival, a way to break the Forum before its final blow could ever reach Earth. Damon has escaped with the Forum's hidden war archive, and the stolen files reveal something massive gathering in secret, a final enemy stronghold that could destroy Earth or become the perfect target for humanity's boldest strike yet.
The stolen archive changed everything. For the first time since the war began, Earth was no longer guessing. Earth knew. Inside the Mountain Command Center, the main tactical wall filled with fresh layers of enemy movement, hidden fuel depots, reserve fleets,
emergency jump lanes, deep command relays. The Forum had been pulling its surviving strength inward, not straight toward Earth, but toward one massive fortress at the center of its old trade system, a place called Crown Spire. Adrian Keel stood with both hands on the command table while officers fed Damon's stolen files into the war map. Crown Spire was more than a station. It was a fortress port, a supply throat, and a command spine all at once. Whoever controlled it could move fleets across half the Forum faster than anyone else. Marcus Vale's voice was low. They're building a final wall. Adrian looked at the glowing image of the fortress. No, they're building a final hope. Another screen flashed with fleet totals. Core First Fleet, Core Second Fleet, Inner Defense Groups, Planetary Reserve Wings, all of them moving toward Crown Spire. Marcus exhaled slowly. They want us to come to them. Adrian stayed silent for a moment. Then he said, "Then we do." Several officers looked up at once. One of them spoke carefully. "Sir, if we attack there, we hit the strongest defense point they have left." "Yes," Adrian said, "and if we leave it alone, they use it to rebuild and come for Earth again. We broke their pride above our world. Now we break their backbone." Far above the planet, Naomi Rayner received the same files aboard the Iron Horizon. She studied the image of Crown Spire in silence. The fortress hung beside a split gas giant, wrapped in defense rings and layered with enough guns to stop an ordinary fleet. An ordinary fleet. Commander Elias Ward watched her face. "You've already decided." Naomi did not deny it. If they finish gathering there, this war lasts for years. And if we strike now, her eyes hardened, then the war ends where their power is thickest. Across human space, damaged ships were repaired at impossible speed. Replacement crews boarded reserve vessels. Ares Colony released attack wings it had not yet shown in battle. Belt stations pushed long-range missile platforms toward rally points. Even merchant ships joined the effort, carrying fuel, food, medical supplies, and spare parts. No one needed speeches now. Humanity understood. This was the march toward the real decision. Then a new signal reached the Mountain Command Center. It did not come from Earth. It came from outside human space. 3 smaller worlds, species that had spent years obeying the Forum out of fear, had seen Adrian's broadcast. They had seen the spared survivors, and now they had made a choice. Their ambassadors appeared together on the command screen. "We will not fight under Forum chains any longer," one said. Another added, "Our fleets are small, but they are yours if your promise was real." Adrian looked at them, and for the first time in many days, something like hope touched his face. "My promise was real," he said. "Stand with us at Crown Spire, and if we win, no one will own your skies again." One by one, they agreed, and just like that, the next battle stopped being only humanity against an empire. It became something larger, something far more dangerous to the old order. At the same time, deep inside Crown Spire, Forum commanders told themselves one last comforting lie: that Earth had won one battle, that Earth could not possibly win the next one. They had no idea what was already moving toward them through the dark. Crown Spire is becoming the Forum's final fortress. New allied fleets are joining Earth, and Naomi has chosen to strike before the enemy is fully ready. But the first thing waiting near the fortress is not a wall. It is a trap hidden inside another trap. Crown Spire was not waiting quietly in the dark. It was waiting with teeth. The moment Naomi Rayner's strike fleet dropped out of jump space near the fortress, warning lights flashed across every human screen. Hidden minefields awoke between the outer defense rings. Long-range cannons turned toward the new arrivals. Then a second wave of red symbols appeared behind the human fleet. Enemy ships. A reserve ambush. Commander Elias Ward stared at the screen. They built a kill zone behind the station. Naomi did not flinch. Of course they did. For one hard second, it looked like the Forum had finally learned. But only partly, because this time, humanity had not come alone. Before the hidden enemy reserve could close the trap, fresh jump signatures tore open across the left flank. The Allied fleets arrived in force, smaller than Earth's, but fast, sharp, and brave. Their ships slammed into the reserve ambush before it could fully lock its weapons. The trap inside the trap broke open in confusion. That was all Naomi needed. "All groups," she ordered, "drive through the center. Missile platforms, open the rings. Fighters, blind their guns. We do not stop." The battle at Crown Spire became the fiercest of the war. Human ships rushed through walls of fire. Allied vessels cut into weak points along the enemy flank. Missile storms hammered the defense rings until glowing sections of armor peeled away and drifted into open space. Strike wings slipped through the gaps and hit shield nodes, power relays, and targeting towers. The fortress fought back like something that knew it was dying. Ships were lost there. Good ships, good people. Naomi watched names vanish from her command list and felt every one of them like pressure against her ribs. But she did not slow. She could not. If Crown Spire survived, the war would go on and feed on everything. Deep under the mountains, Adrian Keel stood beside Marcus Vale, watching the live feed in silence. Then Damon's stolen archive delivered its final gift, a hidden maintenance spine deep inside Crown Spire, unshielded for 12 seconds during an internal power cycle. Adrian sent the route at once. On the iron horizon, the path lit across Naomi's tactical display like a knife finding the gap between ribs. She gave the order. One human assault wing broke formation and drove straight into the opening. They flew through fire, collapsing metal, and drifting wreckage. At the heart of the fortress, they dropped phase charges into the core relay and barely cleared the chamber before the shockwave reached them. Crown Spire went dark. Then it began to come apart. Not in one giant flash, in pieces. Gun towers fell silent, defense rings drifted loose, command sections snapped away from the core like broken bones from a dying giant. Across the battlefield, Forum ships began to stop fighting. Some fled, some surrendered, some simply drifted, as if the idea holding them together had died with the station. And, in truth, it had. Days later, Adrian stood once more before the gathered powers of the broken Forum. But this time, no one shouted, no one laughed, no one demanded surrender. They listened. "We did not come to rule you," Adrian said. "We came because you tried to rule us. Let this be the last empire built on fear. Let every world stand free. Let strength be used for protection, not chains." No one argued. They were too tired of war, too full of its cost. So the old Forum ended there, not with cheers, with relief. And when peace finally began to spread, Naomi looked up at the quiet stars and understood the truth at last. Humanity had not won because it loved war. Humanity had won because when the galaxy tried to force it to kneel, it refused. From the ruins of Crown Spire, a different future began. Not perfect, not easy, but free. May this message strengthen your faith and renew your hope. Thank you for staying until the end. If this touched your heart, like, share, and subscribe to Astro Realms for more uplifting content. May God's blessings overflow in your life. See you soon.